Okay, class, so here we are working on perspective. So the image you're seeing right now is 2-point perspective. You can see we've got point A and B. I've used blue and orange to show you how I drew the lines. The vanishing points are at the two sides, A and B. A vanishing point is always on the horizon line, and we're going to have angles there and then straight lines for the other. So here's a vanishing point along the horizon line. The horizon line would be like if you were at the beach and you saw where the water and the sky join together. Now what we're doing right now here is 1-point perspective. So our vanishing point is right there, and we're drawing everything to that point. We've created boxes and drew it to that point. Now what we've got is diminishing. So diminishing is where you would see, say, telephone poles at a long distance. It would be with 1-point perspective in this particular instance. And what I've done is I've created what the vanishing point was. I drew the road. I drew the tops of the telephone poles, and they get a little bit narrower as you go along. They get shorter and narrower as they go towards the back. They diminish in size. So here's an example of the horizon line. The horizon line is whatever you're looking at straight with your eyes, okay? So here, if you were looking straight at it, you would be looking right at a box. You wouldn't see the top or the bottom. You would see the side of it or the front of it. It shows you here, if you looked up, you'll see underneath the box, and if you look down, you'll see above the box. So these squares that I've drawn illustrate that. So the horizon line is also the eye line, or the eye level line. It's called looking. You notice how all of the edges of those corners go right to the vanishing point. All right. That's looking at it, looking underneath, up at it, and looking down at it. Okay. So here again is 1-point perspective, where I've drawn a whole bunch of buildings in 1-point perspective. So you can see that all the vertical lines, they're verticals and horizontals, and they follow the horizon line. Whoops. Okay, here we go, starting again. I lost some of that video. All right, so now we're going to do 1-point perspective. I'm going to actually draw it for you. This is diminishing. Same thing as those telephone poles. All right, so I've chosen the point along the horizon line, drawing the horizon line, then choosing two places where I want to draw this to, just arbitrarily, but everything, wherever they are, they have to join up with that vanishing point. All right, so one on the top, one on the bottom. Now I'm going to start drawing vertical lines. They have to be perpendicular to the horizon line. They are vertical and they're perpendicular to the horizon line. When you do this by hand, they can get off a little because, again, I've told you, when you have your hand down there hard on the paper, you tend not to be able to draw straight. So now I'm coming back with the ruler just to make sure that they're straight. And draw lightly. You're going to want to erase a lot of these lines. So now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of drawing poles. And I'm going to do it pretty quickly because I don't want to take up too much time. As they diminish, they would get narrower. So you can see I'm making them just a little bit skinnier as we get closer to the horizon line, and they get very small. Now, I'm going to erase some of those lines so you can actually get the feel for these poles. Don't erase your vanishing point, though. You want to keep that because you're going to be referring to it repeatedly. Okay. draw some of the wires. And the wires would hang down because, of course, they're not that taut. And the second line of wires, they'd be farther apart the closer they are to you. They get a little bit closer to each other. And they would, if you were doing it in great detail, they would get thicker towards you and thinner away from you. Then I'm just putting in what looks like a little bit of grass just to sort of give this some kind of reference point. Next, I'm going to draw what I think would be the edge of a road. Let's say this is a road, a highway, and it's a straight highway. So you go from the vanishing point, you pick a spot where you want it to start and head it right over to that vanishing point. Now I'm just putting in some shading in a different direction just to kind of show that there's a difference between where these poles are and the road. Tracing a little bit more. Okay, now I think we're going to do the other side. So I'm going to arbitrarily do those other two lines. You know, I kind of want to make them look similar to the first ones, but they don't have to. I draw them lightly because, again, remember, we're going to want to erase things. Don't draw too hard until you're at your final stage. All right, so this one, I'm going to actually make it a wall. I'm going to come in with just some vertical lines first. But rather than making it poles or slats of a wall, I'm going to actually just fill in all these lines to make it look like a wall that's made out of 2x4s. They would get closer together towards the end, a little bit darker back there because you're not going to have as much light because it's farther away. Your eye can't see as much light. Here I am bringing in that other side of the road. I'm going to bring in some horizontal lines to contrast the vertical lines of the fence or the wall. And then make it a little bit darker back there. Now I'm going to add mountains. So let's just assume we are in New Mexico and we're at the desert. We're looking out at mountains, and this is one of those long roads that goes through the entire desert. If you were drawing this in New England, there would be no way you would be able to get this kind of vista. All right. So now it's starting to look a little bit more like that. So now I'm going to come in and just start putting in some shading. And then I'm going to draw the top of that fence to give it a little bit more three-dimensionality. So it looks a little bit more like a fence. And darken it more towards the horizon line. And then I'm going to bring in a little bit of plant life here and there. Make it a little bit darker. All right, so all of a sudden now we have this long road with this long highway. It's got a fence on one side. It's got telephone poles on the other with electricity or whatever running through the wires. All right, clouds. Done. The next one we're going to do is a more one-point perspective. But this time we're going to do buildings. Draw the horizon line again. Always make that parallel to the edge of your paper. Now I'm putting the vanishing point over to the right a little bit. I'm just going to start by making a rectangle. This is the edge of one side of a building. Then I'm going to join each of those 3 points, the 3 outer points, with this vanishing point. And now I'm going to arbitrarily decide how long this building is going to be. Is it going to be from there, or all the way back? I'm going to put it right about here. And again, I want to make lines that are parallel and perpendicular at this point. The only lines that are on an angle are the ones that go to the vanishing point. Okay, so now I've got a cube. Doesn't quite look like a building yet. But I think I want to put another building there. So I'm going to draw, again, following the same lines that I've used for my vanishing point. I can use those again because I'm in the same line, sight line. I'm just going to make another building. All right. So now I've got 2 buildings. It's beginning to look a little bit like maybe a town, small village. So now I want to put a building on the other side, which will be a little bit like putting it on the other side of the street. And because it's closer, I'm making it bigger. Or I want it to look like it's closer, so I'm making it bigger. Following with the vanishing point, drawing along from those points. Coming along, okay? Now, how big is this going to be? I am going to make this a long building. All the way to there, okay? And erasing some of the extra lines that we don't need anymore. Now I want to put a building right in front of my vision of everything. So see, now I'm drawing right over those other buildings, connecting it with the vanishing point. This third line is going to be a little bit trickier because there's not that much room, but I have to go from that point to the vanishing point. All right. And how long do I want that to be? I'm going to bring it all the way over to here and then just a hair there. Now I'm going to erase the buildings that this new one is hiding. Darkening up those lines. Okay. So now it looks like we're either in a warehouse with a lot of boxes or the beginning of a town. I'm just going to perfect that one line a little bit more. And there we have a 1-point perspective. Now you could start adding windows to make these high rises. Or if you wanted to make them boxes, you could start adding packing tape on them. It's up to you. What I'd like to have you do is use this 1-point perspective and make some kind of interesting drawing with whatever you want. It could be buildings, it could be boxes, it could be toys, it could be whatever you want. I just want you to learn how to do this perspective. Thanks for watching, and I look on e-learning for the rest of the assignment. Oh, forgot, I'm going to add light poles. See how they get bigger? Remember, diminishing, it's the same thing. As they get farther away, they get smaller. And it's the same shape, just bigger as you get closer. Now it really looks like a town. because now you can see how tall that building is compared to those lights. Oh, we make a little person back there too. Hello. And the same person, another person, but bigger in the foreground. Okay?